I've had a bunch of messages asking me if I've had the same issues tacking the PPC M1R as most other people have had. The main issue that you're going to run into when you go for your first tack with the M1R is you'll throw it over your head. The thing will come down like a hydraulic press, crushing you and making you crash the tack. Kicking it off with the first tip, and it's tacking speed. If you've watched any of my other tacking videos, normally I will tell you go into the tack with as much speed as you can possibly handle with stability. And the reason for that is it gives you more of a buffer between the speed that you enter the tack in and the stall speed. So as you decelerate through the tack, you hopefully don't end up hitting that stall speed and crashing. You don't want to do this when you're learning the tack with the M1R. Eventually you can get back to that advice, but the symptom that we're trying to fix is the crushing that happens when the wing gets through the tack and the flow starts doing some funny things, which leads to that crush. This is why when troubleshooting, I decided that I'm going to go into my tacks with a medium speed to a slower speed and slowly increase the speed of the tacks as I got more and more repetitions. The reason for this is the amount of crushing that happens as you go through the tack depends on how much flow is going over the wing. So if it's a windier day, it's going to crush harder. If you go through the tack really fast, it's going to crush harder as well. If you go in with a medium amount of speed, the amount of force that you've got to push against and the amount of muscle memory that you've got to change is just less. So that's my first tip. Just try tacking a bit slower to start with, and then as you get more proficient, you can increase that tacking speed back to where you were. This next one's a bit confusing, but you want to put the wing forward in the window as you tack. So what that looks like is as you go for the tack, you throw the wing overhead, but you want it to be forward of the board as far as you can. So this front hand, instead of it being just in that normal position where you tack, you throw the wing, you roll it over your head, you want to bring it as far forward as you can as you roll it over your head. The reason for that is once you get through the tack, you'll then have the opportunity to move it back. So you've gone through the tack, the wing's really far forward because you've thrown it forward of the board, and then as you go for the hand switch, you can actually move the wing back behind you, which in turn reduces the flow over the wing. You'll see a common trend with how I'm trying to troubleshoot this. I don't want to say issue because it's really just changing your muscle memory. This crushing effect is really about reducing the flow over the wing at that critical point, which is when you've gotten to the new side of the tack with the wing. So throw the wing forward in the window so that when you go for the hand swap, you can bring it back in the window, reducing the flow over the wing and reducing that crushing force on the opposite side of the tack. We're doing these rapid fire. So this next one is hand location. So initially I thought, nah, we're gonna slide our hand all the way forward, that'll fix it. The wing wants to dip, so if my hand's all the way forward, it makes more sense because it'll push up and things will be fine. This didn't work for me. It actually made the crushing issue worse. So what you want to do, and what I found works for me, was I'm riding along with my hands on the wing. This is my front hand, this is my back hand, and before I go for the tack, I make this conscious effort to move my front hand sort of to the one-handed position where you'd ride like one-handed with the wing, or as close as I could get to that, and still handle the loads of throwing it through a tack. I think the reason for this is the crushing force is going to come into the wing through that load, that center of load or that center of effort point. So if your hand's right there, you're pushing against it straight away, as opposed to being here and the force is here and you're sort of levering against it, which means that it's going to require more effort. And that's why when I slid my hand forward to throw into the tack, I just couldn't meet the amount of push force that I had to put against that crushing force. So slide that hand back to that one-handed position as you throw it into a tack and throw it forward, and that will likely help the situation. The other reason that sliding the hand back to that one-handed position before you throw the tack really helps is when you get it through the tack and you go for that hand swap, what you've then created is a bit more of a triangle. When I attempted the tack with my hand all the way forward, when I go for that hand swap, I'm pushing like this, which is just not a strong position. If I'm pushing like this, it's much stronger and I can push against that crushing force just a lot easier. The other benefit, I guess, is your new backhand, which is where your new backhand, which was in the one-handed position prior to the tack, has less distance to move to get to the backhand spot where you can then get pressure on the wing and counteract, get some angle of attack into that wing and stop it from crushing and actually start to get it lifting again. The last tip, and I'm doing this one last because I want you to remember this one, is when you go for that first tack, throw it over your shoulder so that the handle, when it crushes, it's going to crush down here. My first tack, I threw it and I was trying to I sort of thought I'd heard the problem and I was a bit conscious going into the first tack, and I got halfway through the tack and it just slammed down on my head. So throwing it over your shoulder means that even if it does crush, it's going to crush down here, and your board and your head and your neck and everything's going to be out of the way of that wing when it crushes. So at least you're not going to have a nasty experience with that first one. Putting that all together, we're going to slow ourselves down a bit. We're going to go into that tack with medium speed. We're going to slide our hand to the one-handed riding position, so there's really not that much load on the backhand. We're going to throw it forward in the wind window and over our shoulder, so if it does start to crush, it's going to crush away from our head and our neck and our board, and making sure that this backhand is not putting too much pressure, it's slowly releasing to the point that it's weightless. Then when we go for the hand swap, we're going to have a strong foundation, and we're also going to be able to slide the wing back in the window because we've sent it forward going into the tack, reducing the flow as it gets to that critical point where it wants to crush you down. And hopefully with all of that put together, you'll land your first scrappy semi-dual skin wing tack. That will be the foundation from where you can build to get proficient at your tacks with a semi-dual skin wing, and you'll be able to get lots and lots of repetitions in, which means you'll be able to get back to that fast entry speed, and you'll get to a point where you won't even remember that it was a problem to begin with. So be patient with it. I'd recommend just incorporating one change at a time, and don't overthink it. Don't try and think about every single step along the way. Just incorporate one thing at a time, get plenty of repetitions in, and eventually you'll nail your tacks every time. I think you'll like these videos, so go and check them out.